Hey, and welcome back to Influential Breathwork. Today we're talking about trauma and can breathwork really help you to release this and integrate it more fully into your body? So first of all, we've got to talk about what trauma is. So we're really clear on exactly what I'm talking about here. So trauma is something that it overwhelms the individual's ability to. So it doesn't have to be this big shebang. It doesn't have to be a huge major event that like a car crash or coping with divorce or an attack or something like that. It can be something that is really small that has overwhelmed the body. And as a result, that is then not able to process things. There's various different types of trauma. So acute trauma would be something from a single incident, so an accident or a natural disaster. The effects of that could be flashbacks, anxiety in similar situations, perhaps hypervigilance even. Then chronic trauma, where there's a repeated and prolonged exposure to traumatic events, as might happen in childhood abuse or domestic violence and so on. And this can lead to difficulty in forming relationships, chronic anxiety and depression. It can hugely affect you and it's very much stored within your body. And then complex traumas that are multiple, varied and prolonged. And these can really cause massive changes in emotional dysregulation, difficulty in multiple areas of usual function. So how does trauma get stuck in the body then? What happens? Well, basically our bodies have their responses to trauma, which are generally known as fight or flight, freeze or fawn. And as a result of these, when these happen, when our body goes into one of these responses, basically there is an incomplete processing of the traumatic event because the individual has dissociated in some way in order to through one of those fight, flight, freeze or fawn, one of those body responses for survival. So we can't actually override those when we're in the moment. We don't have choices about that. They're going to kick in because our body takes over. What happens is we have an overactive amygdala, which leads to a heightened fear response, not just in that moment, but ongoing as well. Okay. And that is problematic. There can be a reduction in activity in the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for rational thinking. So it becomes harder to make rational decisions because the prefrontal cortex isn't working at an optimal. Now, in terms of somatic manifestations of trauma, and what we're talking about somatic is how you store that in the body. People can experience muscle pain as a result of that. They can have chronic pain that can pop up in all sorts of different types of the body. Back pain is pretty common, but I've also known people have neck pain. I've known people to have gastro issues as a result of trauma. I mean, it can pretty much land anywhere in your body. And it can also, over a longer period, alter your breathing pattern. So if you think about being hypervigilant all the time, then you're in a state of stress. So your sympathetic nervous system is heightened and your parasympathetic, which takes you to that place of being peace and peaceful, and where you're able then to allow your body to rest and repair and fully digest. You're not accessing that. So your body's always pumping out these stress hormones, which is a huge issue. As a result, your sleep is then often disrupted and you have huge digestive issues, which is not pretty. In terms of the neurobiology of trauma, then, what happens is basically the autonomic nervous system is constantly in this trauma response. And over time, this leads to changes, long-term changes in brain structure and brain function. Now, traditionally, in approaching trauma and healing trauma, talk therapy was the go-to. And over time, EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, I can never quite remember, but EMDR has come into the somatic world for how can we process trauma. And it's super powerful. All obviously to do with the eye movements and how having your eyes in a particular way can actually help you to process the trauma, help your brain to just integrate things much more effectively for your own benefit. And also we're seeing the rise of somatic experiencing. And what we mean by this is how the body can then process those trapped memories, those trapped stories. Perhaps there was an urge to punch someone or kick out, but because you were frozen, you haven't been able to do that in that moment. Or perhaps your body's response was to fawn when really what you wanted to do was run, and you were stopped and prevented from doing that. So through somatic experiencing, you can get in touch with what's that body impulse that was not allowed to happen at the time, and how can you find a way to let it all out. Now, this is where breathwork comes in, because breathwork, among many other things, is a somatic therapy. It provides a somatic release, and not all breath works, not all breathing exercises provide this trauma release, but the ones that do, of which conscious connected breathing, CCB breathing as it's often referred to, and breath healing release, which is the modality that we use in influential breathwork that is particular to our trainings, can allow you to really pinpoint where you're holding that stress, that tension, that story, and allow yourself, through connecting with the body, through releasing the toxins that are stored in that area through the breath, and also by putting your subconscious awareness onto that story that you've been holding and that it no longer serves you, you are able to have these deep experiences where you're processing that trauma. Now, we can process that through breathwork by accessing and regulating the autonomic nervous system. Breathing is the one system of the body where we can take control, and we can show the body that staying in that stress state is not good for it. That's not where we're supposed to be. We do need stress. Stress can be a positive, but we need to remember how to come back down and recalibrate. And some of these longer breathwork journeys are incredibly powerful at putting your body under a deliberate stress to remind it that it doesn't have to stay there. It's a little bit, I always talk about it's like the iPhone factory reset, if you like. That's what one of these breathwork journeys can do. You're also able to release stored tension. So literally, I've had people who've had back pain for 2 years, have one 90-minute session doing a breath healing release session, and that back pain has gone. They've not had to go back to their osteopath or chiropractor. We've had people who have, for example, really struggled with impotency, and through doing 1 or 2 sessions have got their mojo back because it was trapped trauma from a childhood experience that didn't need to be there, wasn't serving them anymore, but had done a really great job in keeping them safe. And that's the interesting thing about a lot of trauma responses, is that they're there to keep us safe, and they've protected us in some way at some point, but they don't serve us now as adults ready to process and heal and function in life in a much better way. It's also amazing at helping you to release emotions, maybe ones you've not been allowed to experience, maybe anger, fear, sadness, hurt, sometimes even heightened emotions like joy, where you've not been allowed to express your own happiness potentially in your past. So by experiencing those emotions during a guided, supported breathwork session, and particularly in the breath healing release modality, with someone who really knows how to guide you through into that safely, through the breathe safely, and then reground you and help you process that into your prefrontal cortex, can have incredibly fast and long-lasting changes for you. Also, with breathwork, we are helping you to reconnect with your mind and your body, right? I think it's so easy to see us as just this brain, this mind that is walking through life, and the body is the vehicle. But our body is so much more complex than we give it credit for, right? It is constantly helping us get through tricky situations. And through going through release of trauma, we can get much more in touch with our intuition and the knowledge that our body holds about what is good for us and what isn't. And when we're in touch with our intuition, life feels much safer. So we're able then, through breathwork, to create a really safe place for processing emotions that are really difficult to look at and experience in everyday life. And my goodness, time and time again, I see people do these sessions and they look 10 years younger immediately afterwards. Their skin is glowing. They feel expansive. They might well have had a cry, or maybe even wanted to sort of rage out during the breath work, but they come round with a feeling that they've let it go, that they have released what's been holding them back, and that they have this expansiveness for their life. Now, there is so much science that is connected with the power of breath work and its ability to help us heal because of the nervous system, the activation of that parasympathetic nervous system that we've often had suppressed for so long, and then a reduction in the sympathetic nervous system's arousal, which has massive impacts on brain activity and neuroplasticity. And we're able then to bring that prefrontal cortex online, have more activity, so that we're able then to have much better cognitive function. You're able to think better and more rationally. So we can also then, through breathwork, enhance the connectivity between different brain regions and help to develop all these synaptic connections and neuroplasticity in the brain. There are huge hormonal shifts. We see a reduction in cortisol. We see an increase in endorphin and oxytocin, which can make you feel amazing. That's why often people can get into quite euphoric or joyful states through breath work, which when you've been living under I kind of want to say under a regime of having this trauma stuck in your body, potentially for decades, the immediate feeling of joy and bliss that you can achieve through breath work really is quite incredible after you've been living in a state that's felt very unsafe. It's maybe been unsafe to be happy, maybe unsafe to feel great in your body and safe in your body. We're able then also to regulate some of the neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. So you're getting those hits without having to have massive stress outbursts. So this then is incredibly powerful. And if you've never tried conscious connected breathing, then I really do urge you to get to a group session or to try some of our exercises that are here on this channel. Over time, we'll be giving you a whole bank of materials to use. And there are other breathwork styles that can work with this: pranayama, holotropic breathwork, and our breath healing release modality, which is like breathwork on steroids for releasing trapped stories, beyond limiting beliefs, really getting to the root of trauma release. And then what happens is your body is able to integrate these stories, integrate this processing into your brain and your body in a much healthier way that leaves you just feeling like the person you're supposed to be. So there's so much research being done in trauma. We see all of this body of work by Gabor Mate, Bessel van der Kolk, and many others, Stephen Porges, for example. And this is only going to grow in the body of work about the brain, the body, and how breath can really support that as well as a somatic therapy. Combined with traditional trauma therapy such as talk therapy, combined with types of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, combined with EMDR or brain spotting, breathwork acts on its own, but it's also like supercharging any of those traditional approaches. Now, of course, any intense breath work that we're doing, we have to make sure that you follow contraindications, you follow professional guidance. You want to make sure that whoever you are doing your breath work with, or if you're doing it at home, you are aware of those risks and that they are fully qualified by a school that really, an academy that really does make sure that they're trauma informed. Because, the risk of this work is that if you're not doing it in a safe way with someone who understands trauma, it can re-trigger some of those past experiences. Now, that's not to scare you, because actually by having it triggered, it can actually help release as well. But you do want to make sure you're with someone in a safe space, with someone who really knows how to support you through that. So number one, to get started with this for trauma healing, find a qualified coach who really is trauma informed. You can try some simple breathing exercises at home. And like I said, we have some on our channel, so have a little look around. And also, if you're really interested in learning a little bit more about conscious connected breathing, we have a free intro to conscious connected breathing on our website. And I'm going to pop the link below as well. I would love to know if you experienced some form of trauma healing through breathwork. What happened for you? What did it feel like? And how did you feel afterwards? And if you liked this and found this interesting, then make sure you subscribe, like, and comment to let me know you're listening so we can produce more videos all about the power of breathwork.